Welcome to Season 2, Episode 4 of FTCE Seminar, a teacher certification podcast. I'm your host, Mercedes Musto. Today, we're diving into social and emotional learning. Joining me is Dr. Freda Barnett-Braddock. Dr. Freda Barnett-Braddock has over 20 years of experience working in various levels of education, ranging from K through 12 to higher ed. She is a licensed educator in the great state of Mississippi and has earned her bachelor's in education, her master's in educational administration, her doctorate in curriculum and instruction. And I also want to add that she has graduate hours in psychology, which totally goes with our topic today. Frida worked as an instructor, course writer, and program director at Columbia Southern University before being promoted to founding dean for the College of Education and assistant provost for academic affairs in January of this year, 2024. Frida's passion for social and emotional learning has deep roots as she created curriculum materials, degree concentrations, and professional development presentations within this whole area. She's so passionate about supporting students by helping all the stakeholders involved realize the importance of students' emotional and physical well-being as they seek to educate the whole learner, because the whole learner has diverse needs. Dr. B, welcome to the podcast.
Hello, Mercedes and listeners. I'm so excited to be here today.
This is so great, especially as we're launching a new school year. So I've asked Dr. B on the show today to talk about her passion for social and emotional learning and how to help educate the whole learner with diverse needs. Dr. B, I can't wait to dive into social and emotional learning stuff. At first, I always like to ask, I'd like our listeners to know a little bit more about your background. So, first off, I always think there's an inspiration somewhere in your early life experiences that shape you and lead into your career choices. Like, how did you get into education, or what were your early life experiences?
Thank you, Mercedes. Yes, as you alluded to, early life experiences shape who we become later. And if I had to look back and reflect upon where I was first inspired to eventually become an educator, I'd have to give all the credit to my mother and my grandparents. They were phenomenally inspirational in my life. Just to give you a bit of a background, my grandmother lost her mom at the age of 5. So at 5 years old, Granny is what I called her. She had to learn how to cook, sew, clean the house, and basically be a caregiver for her 3 brothers and her dad. So that is more than most 5-year-olds should even have to fathom, should have to be exposed to. But my granny had to rise to the occasion and basically become a young woman at a very, very young age due to life's circumstances. So although she had many challenges growing up without her mother, she knew that she wanted to be her best in whatever she did. Growing up in rural Mississippi, it was not easy going to school. There were many challenges. And so she had the segregated South to contend with, as well as trying to, again, just help her dad with the raising of her siblings. And so the fact that she was able to persevere and become valedictorian of her class was so
Wow.
inspirational to me, despite knowing what all she went through. My pawpaw, on the other hand, my grandfather, his story is a bit different. He had to quit school when he was in 8th grade. His mom had 9 children. And again, they grew up in rural Mississippi as well. So very, very humble, poor beginnings, let's be honest. And she needed help from him being one of the oldest children to help provide financially for the other siblings. So my pawpaw did what a young man would do, and he rose to the occasion. He quit school, although he, knew an education was important. He had to weigh and balance what was the bigger and more pressing importance in his life, and that was helping his mom. And so he quit school in 8th grade and never was able to complete. He didn't get a GED. He worked in factories throughout his whole entire lifetime once he became of age and could get a job. but he wanted better for his children and grandchildren. He knew how hard it was in life for him by not having a high school diploma, not having a GED, let alone having a college degree. And so he wanted his children and grandchildren to have better than what he experienced. The last person, but certainly not the least, is my mother. My mom, at the age of 20, became pregnant with me. She was finishing up her community college experience, and she had to quit school once she finished her 2 years of community college so that she could go to work and start, being a provider for me. She and my dad married at a young age. She was 20, he was 21, and they had lots of challenges, but she knew that she never wanted to let go of that dream of completing her education. So the three of them, my granny, my papa, and my mom, always pushed me and my sister. I have a sister who's 10 years younger than me, to go to school and to get as much education as we can. My papa used to say, Freda, get your education, because that's the one thing they can't take from you. And that always stuck with me because, again, I grew up in the South. I grew up in North Mississippi. I knew all of the challenges that my grandparents had experienced and that I too, sadly, was still experiencing as a young girl growing up in an atmosphere that wasn't always conducive to equity and making sure that all people were accepted and given different opportunities. And so I knew that by listening to them and seeing how they were able to triumph, it helped me to keep pushing and to want to help others. I knew that education was going to be the key to helping me have a better life than what they had experienced. So when you ask what made me want to get into education, it was those three folks, my granny, my papa, and my mom, pushing me to never give up. My mom even walked across the stage. She and I both graduated with our bachelors on the same day. So she went back to school. She wanted her daughters, my sister and me, to know that it's never too late to complete your education. A dream deferred does not mean a dream denied. And so she, as well as my deceased grandparents, are my driving factors every day.
That is such a beautiful family story. And it really resonates with me that you said rise up, that your granny had to rise up considering the circumstances, and that your papa had to overcome and support the challenges he's made, and he rose up. And then it sounds to me like the inspiration and love that you grew up seeing and echoed into your life, and that's why you're bouncing around with all this really light, beautiful energy that I see in you. Um, this I think that you're the perfect person to take your family's life experiences and and then translate them into the whole topic of social and emotional learning. Because to me, my experience, speaking for myself, is that learning starts in the home, and
Absolutely.
then you when a student is in the classroom, let's say in the elementary years, they you don't know what you don't know. And that's why
Right.
teachers are so important. I always say teachers are some of the original influencers. um and I would like to discuss a little bit about social and emotional learning and how important it is, in different aspects, like for the student in the classroom and for teachers in teacher education.
Absolutely, Mercedes. Social emotional learning is near and dear to my heart. It speaks to so many tenets of our lives. As you mentioned, students need to have tools and resources to best handle emotional issues that they're dealing with. They need to be taught how to handle their emotions, stress, how to build positive relationships, how to take responsibility for their decision making, and how to face challenges when they arise. Like you mentioned, I was fortunate to have good role models within the home. I had positive influences that showed me that there was more to the world than what I necessarily saw in our small circle at the time. I had positive people who poured into me and told me, treat others the way you want to be treated. Whatever you do, do the best you can in life, no matter what you're aspiring to become. But all students don't have that privilege. They're not as fortunate as I was. And so that's why I'm so passionate about social emotional learning, because I believe it's not only important with the students, but the whole entire school culture. Adults, the teachers, the staff, the admins, everybody experiences life daily. We all face challenges. We all have things that come into our path that we have to overcome. And so social emotional learning creates social awareness, self-awareness, being able to look at things, your emotions, your values, things that might be deemed as a limitation, and how to address those and overcome them. Social emotional learning also deals with self-management. We all have the tendency to sometimes get angry and react when someone is maybe attacking us verbally, or albeit, let's dare say, physically. But we need to learn how to responsibly respond during those tough situations when our behaviors want to be in a negative way. We need to have the tools and resources that we don't act out in an adverse way. Also, social emotional learning teaches us about social awareness, just being mindful of the fact that we're all diverse. We all come from differing backgrounds. We all have lived experiences that impact us. Childhood is one of the biggest factors that impacts someone's life forever. And we're always working, or we should be working, to correct issues that we've experienced in childhood, to try to grow from them, and to actually then, in my opinion, pour into others to help them be able to do the same. I believe that life is reciprocal. When we are fortunate to receive something, then we should go and give that to somebody else. So social emotional learning gives us self-awareness that we're all different, but we're all important. We all have value and self-worth. And sometimes children, adults need to be reminded of that. Social emotional learning teaches relationship skills. Some students, unfortunately, don't have people who even communicate with them in the home. They're busy. Lots of people are single parents. They're busy working outside the home. They're just trying to, there's some single moms who are working multiple jobs, just trying to keep the lights on, food on the table, and to keep their children with their basic human needs. According to Maslow, we have basic needs that have to be met first before we can ever move on to higher order things. And so we've got some single moms and some single dads. It's not just single moms. We have people who are overwhelmed with life, and they don't always have the time to help build those strong relationships with their children. But that doesn't mean those children don't need those skills and those relationships. So social emotional learning helps us to teach children how to have healthy, positive relationships with others. You may not like everybody that comes across your path, but you sure can give them common courtesy and respect. Again, that goes back to my granny and papa. They were so wise. Neither had a college education, but they were some of the smartest people I ever met in my life. And they always said, treat everybody the way you want to be treated. It's a simple but profound truth that I believe is still applicable today. And then finally, social emotional learning teaches children and adults about responsible decision making. So, just as I mentioned earlier, sometimes people will say things or do things to us that will trigger emotions, trigger reactions. But we have to take responsibility for our behaviors. We cannot control anybody else, but we are responsible for how we react and respond to others. So social emotional learning gives people, not children, people, meaning children and adults, the tools to do that. And that's why I keep reiterating the importance of SEL within the entire school culture. So it's important to teach this not only to the children, but to the faculty, to the staff, to the admins, and also involve the community. We've got parents who didn't get that strong foundation in social emotional SEL learning. We can create programs and outreach efforts that pull them in to let them know, as a school, we value you. We love your children, and we want you to be a part of this learning environment because you're an important stakeholder in your child's education. So the benefits for social emotional learning are numerous. Research has shown that students who are exposed to some type of SEL curriculum, social emotional learning curriculum, tend to do better academically. 10 to 11%. There are different studies, but some studies propose around 11% better if they have those tools. Because guess what? You can't do well in a classroom learning academics if your mind is fixated on different things that you've got going on at home, maybe major issues you've got going on with another student, say bullying. If you're sitting there hungry, you didn't get to eat breakfast that morning, it's going to be really tough to focus on spelling words when your stomach is rumbling because you didn't have anything to eat, because mom wasn't able to buy groceries because she's waiting on her check that comes in on Friday. So it's important to make sure that we realize the benefit that social emotional learning can do for students in the classroom as well as the adults. It helps us with better emotional regulation. Again, when people are faced with heated situations or things that would maybe push them to do adverse reactions, social emotional learning gives them those tools to try to talk about, situations, to realize that although you can't control someone else, you have to learn how to control your own emotions. So we can teach students and teachers. Teachers work with other teachers. Teachers work with admins. You're not always going to agree with your administrator. Trust me, I've been in those shoes. But you, as a teacher, have to walk the talk, so to speak, and make sure that you are handling your stress and anxiety, maybe that's being pushed down on you, so that it does not negatively impact your students in the classroom. SEL does that. Also, again, it enhances social skills. Some people tend to have issues with communicating and getting along with others. So social emotional learning, again, addresses the simple principle of respect. You don't have to always like everybody. And guess what? You won't. But you can respect them. You can treat them the way you want to be treated. And that's a driving factor that I try to use in my life every single day. And I try to teach that to my son as well. Again, we're going to be faced with all types of challenges, adversities, but the thing that we can control is us and our reaction to them. So being able to dial it back when we want to overreact is a principle and tenet that social emotional learning teaches. Another positive and benefit that I want to leave with the listeners is social emotional learning creates a better school climate. When everybody in the school environment, the admins, the superintendents, the teachers, the students, support personnel, when everybody feels valued, because guess what? There's no I in team. We all are better together. When everybody feels valued for the role that they play, they're going to naturally try to do better. When you feel as if you are seen and heard and valued, it helps your own self-worth. It helps you to react more positively to others. And when we can make parents feel like they're important stakeholders in the educational process, they are more likely to get involved in the school and to come and volunteer and to do things that are necessary to create that whole school culture. And so SEL does that. It shows us how to help connect all members of the school culture. It helps to create a sense of safety. Schools are very much places that can often be deemed as hostile environments in some instances, just due to the challenges that many students face. And they let those challenges that they're experienced, maybe from bullying or from negative home environments, they let that impact them in the classroom. Well, we want to create a safe environment. The school has to be a safe environment, again, for students to be able to focus on their education. If you're afraid someone is going to bully you or physically harm you, it's going to be very challenging for you to focus on your ABCs and 1, 2, 3s. And then finally, SEL has long-term benefits. If we help students really dig into just the basic principles of social emotional learning, recognizing their feelings, finding ways to regulate their emotions, taking responsibility for decisions, because you're not always going to make great decisions. We're human. But taking responsibility for those, being big enough to say, you know what? I'm sorry. I made a mistake. I overreacted. Will you forgive me? Doing those simple yet important things will help students long term because they're eventually going to become adults who will hopefully continue to practice these principles in life. They're going to want to aspire to become more because they're going to realize that they have indeed self-worth and value, and that they are a valuable member of not only their school culture but the entire community, and we need them.
There's so much good stuff to unpack here. I have goosebumps.
Yes.
I wanted to pause. It takes me back to my first year teaching,
Mm-hmm.
and I was very fortunate. I can see it even more clearly now. Shout out to Laura Touchstone, who was the principal at Pine Forest High School in it was like 2016, 2017. She's at Tate now, but shout out to her because she brought in capturing kids' hearts, and
Mm-hmm.
for faculty and staff, we all attended a 3-day workshop. And we
Mm-hmm.
went in, we're like, oh, that teacher workshop. It's back
Right.
to school. But man, we got in that workshop. Tears were falling down. We're hugging each other. And it's because I had never looked at the coach like that before. I had never
Mm-hmm.
listened to the science teacher. I had put them in a box. And then we became human together.
Mm-hmm.
It was the most beautiful workshop I have ever been to.
Mm-hmm.
Then we took those principles that we had learned, and some of us who had not learned those at home, into the classroom. I had the
Mm-hmm.
best first year by bringing
Love it. Love it.
capturing kids' hearts into their classroom. I actually spent 10 days working with how we're going to treat each other here. And we made a social contract that I facilitated. The students decided this is how, and respect was always
Mm-hmm.
number one, always number
Absolutely.
one. And we modeled, how we would like this to look. And
Absolutely.
by the end of the school year, we had, I like light music in my class. I taught a journalism course. And so we had like chill, lo-fi, instrumental hip hop.
Mm-hmm.
We were a very calm class. Everyone knew what to do. If you had a hard day, it was understandable. I had a start your day over line. You go ahead line. I've started my day over. And you step over the
Mm-hmm.
line. And because you were able, we had coping skills. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so when you mentioned the importance of administration, faculty, staff, that it's everyone. It's not just K through 12 learning. It's everyone. And that I had recently said, I was talking with a student and they're saying, I feel like the world is happening to me. All this is happening to me. And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, you know what though? You don't have to react. You can
Right.
respond because you're also happening to the world.
Mm-hmm.
So
Oh, I love
when
it.
you have this negative emotion or an experience that is crunchy, you can
Mm-hmm.
smooth things out by responding with respect or
Mm-hmm.
calmly or how you
Mm-hmm.
would like to be treated. We don't have to raise our
Absolutely.
voice, and then that begins to break those cycles. That person might have thought, I thought they were going to yell back at me, and you didn't. And
Absolutely.
now we're spreading those seeds of respect. It's like drop an ounce of respect somewhere, see how it spreads. And so I'm just I'm just floored at how much good stuff you had to share. I know that you have an extensive background of experience, like a whole bunch of it, just to me, amazing successes in administration. What was one of the most challenging situations you faced, like related to education or the classroom, and how did you navigate through that?
I love that you mentioned first year teaching. And so when I think back to one of the more challenging experiences that I faced, I go back to my first year as a teacher. I had a student who had behavioral issues. He was very disruptive in my classroom. And as a first year teacher, I went in the classroom, I was excited. I thought all students were going to just sit there quietly and listen to me and just want to soak up everything that I had to say and offer. Boy, was I wrong. This little student had many behavioral and emotional issues that he was dealing with. And as a first year teacher, I had, been exposed to various courses to prepare me for that, but there's nothing like experience. Experience is the ultimate teacher. And so I had all of these strategies and theories that I should be doing and implementing in the classroom, but nothing was working. And coincidentally, I turned to my administrator, whom I thought was going to be able to provide support and help. And unfortunately, I didn't receive that. I at the time couldn't understand why I was being told to do certain things for this student when it was clearly being a sign of showing favoritism. The student had a parent who was actually a teacher within our district. So there was a bit of favoritism being shown. And so it was very challenging for me because some of the directives, I'll say, that I was given on how to handle the student were clearly not fair to the other students in the classroom. And so I really had a tough time adjusting during that first year because it was seemingly challenge after challenge after challenge. But looking back now, after 20 plus years of experience, I realized just as I was frustrated, confused, torn on what to do, that administrator, that was his first year as an admin. So he was learning too. He was learning on how to navigate supporting his faculty, his teachers. And so just like I know, and this is a part of taking responsibility for your decision making, just as I wasn't perfect in some of the decisions I was making in the classroom, I had to realize that that administrator, although he was doing his best, he wasn't perfect either. We were all learning. That student was depending on us to be the examples, to lead by example, and to teach him what was and what wasn't acceptable behaviors, but to also realize he was just a child. He was still navigating life at a very young age of 6. You know, many of the behaviors and calls for attention were really cries for help. So I looked back later and with a different lens, I call them SEL, an SEL lens. I put on my SEL glasses and I looked back and I saw more clearly that that student needed support in ways that we didn't even realize at the time. Again, you have to remember this was back in 99, my very first year to teach. SEL wasn't a buzzword. That type of training wasn't quote unquote popular and even in existence yet in the form that we have it now. Excuse me. So I didn't have those resources, those tools to lean upon and to embrace. I did try to lead with love, but I also know now in reflecting back, and again, that's part of taking responsibility for one's own actions, I could have done much better. So that's one of my driving memories as far as challenges. It was my first year to teach. I was learning just like those students were learning. And then in turn, my admin was learning because he was new in his role. So once you realize that everybody, like you just mentioned, is experiencing life, they're going through their own challenges that we are not even aware of, it makes it a little easier to extend empathy and grace to others. Because truthfully, I believe at the heart of most people is goodness. They want to do well. They want to treat others with the best intentions possible, but we just sometimes don't realize what that is while we're in the moment, while we're experiencing that particular issue. As I look back, I think you could have done this better. You could have done that better. And although I can't go back in time and change some of the decisions that I made, I can help others not make the same mistakes that I did. So I try to pour into new teachers and our faculty members and help them to realize that sometimes behaviors that you see on the surface are not directly related to what the deeper and root cause is. And so it's important to realize that not only when you're dealing with children, but as you mentioned, as we're dealing with fellow colleagues, someone could be snappy and, make a snide remark, but you don't know what they just experienced before they left their home, that morning. And so, although you may be the recipient of an quote unquote nasty attitude, it has nothing to do with you. And so that's what I try to lead with in my life now is I try not to take things personally when people come across in a negative manner, because usually it's not even about me. There's something deeper that's going on. And just like they don't know what's going on in my life, I don't know what's going on in their life. So that helps me to be empathetic and to say, let me not add to their plate. Let me try to treat them with kindness, and hopefully that will shine just a little bit of sunshine on their gray day.
This is exactly why I'm so glad that you're on the show today and to discuss how important this is in every aspect of school culture. You know,
Right.
with the students, I really brought to my attention one person that I learned from about social and emotional learning was a student, and this is in the detention center that I worked at as an English teacher.
Hmm.
A student named Marvin. He was a older student. It's fifth through 12th in the detention center. But Marvin sat down. He said, Miss Musso, I want I'd like an assignment with a quote at the top, and then we can write about the quote. And his
Mm.
idea, I put that idea on paper because he was one of the influencers of, being an older boy in the classroom. And it was like I made it a writing assignment. And then how you were discussing your own personal reflection. So you
Hmm.
reflected on your experience and you said, well, I don't want to do that again. Um, I'll do it differently next time. And then I'll share that experience with others. And
Hmm.
that's what we did with Marvin's idea for an assignment. That assignment ended up turning
Hmm.
into 100 different quotes with reflections for all the
Wow.
students, and they would keep them. We would write, and then we would discuss if to your comfort level. And the students
Yeah.
got
Hmm.
to reflect on anger, or on here's one that I learned when I was in there, that aggression may be a form of depression.
Hmm.
And and they're like,
Absolutely.
oh, maybe I'm frustrated. So we're learning new
Hmm.
vocabulary. We can name what we're feeling and become, here's something else you brought up, aware. And
Hmm.
it was really, and this was the seeds for me, the beginning of
Hmm.
this type of learning and teaching.
Yes.
So I learned it from a
Right.
student, and then I was like, this is a great idea. We should teach this to others. And then it became a thing. And then we added some more dimensions to it, and here we are today. So
Right.
I would
Love
have to
it.
say, you had mentioned your granny and your papa and your mother. And I'm really big on the mentoring influences in people's lives. And, it could be
Hmm.
sometimes it's just a few minutes. It's like a passing conversation at an airport and it sticks with you.
Hmm.
And or it could be someone whose lifetime was an influence on you. Particularly, like, who would you like to mention as an influence in your life that mentored you throughout your amazing educational journey?
Well, excuse me, Mercedes, as you mentioned, I am the biggest proponent of mentorship. I believe a mentor, as you mentioned, they may happen or drop into your life for a brief moment, one experience, or they can have long lasting connection with you that truly does have a wide breadth of influence. But one of the biggest impacts that has ever taken place in my life was my experience of being mentored by Shantell Cooley. Shantell Mays Cooley and her family founded Columbia Southern University. And I first heard Shantell speak, I believe it was around 2012, 2011 or 2012. I was a part time adjunct there at Columbia Southern. I had gone to campus for a summer event where they brought in faculty members so we could connect with each other and gain some best practices and meet administrators and interact with, different staff members. And so, of course, I was excited to go down to the beach, Orange Beach, Alabama, and meet some of the folks that I had been working with online. But I never would have dreamt that I would get to meet one of the actual founders of the university. And when I tell you Shantell Cooley is a powerhouse in motivational speaking and leadership and mentorship, she changed my life. I remember listening to her and the transparency that she exhibited during her talk. She was trying to get faculty members to understand the history behind Columbia Southern, how their family literally started the university with $25 and a dream. And what blew my mind was all of the tragedies that they faced that eventually became triumphs. So from tragedy to triumph. And she was sharing all of those nuggets, very valuable nuggets of wisdom in her talk. And her family had many adverse circumstances that they had to overcome. She writes about them in her books. So anybody can go and order her book and read firsthand what their family experienced as they were founding the university and the ups and downs that they experienced during those initial years. And I sat there and all I could think of was, wow, if this woman who had so many challenges, had gone through so many things that were meant to keep her down, to discourage her, to make her want to give up and quit, if she can stand before me and tell me, hey, I made it to the other side, then I can too. And it just lit a fire in me to want to instill that in our students, because I was teaching so many students who would share stories with me about how they're working a full-time job, they're trying to fit in going to college, and it's a dream that they had to put on the back burner, but they hadn't given up on it, but they just were almost at their wits end and wanted to throw in the towel. And from hearing her that day, I went back home with just a renewed passion and actually an invigorated spirit to share that tenacity of never giving up with our students. And so I can recall thinking, I've got to meet her. I've got to get to know her, because that little one instance that I had with her was just basically whetting my appetite, because I wanted to become just a semblance of what she had become as a leader, knowing that you can be transparent, you can admit that you've not always made the best decisions, but you can change and you can try to positively shape and inspire lives each and every day that you get up. And so I was inspired by that first meeting. A few years later, I actually moved down to the coast when I became an administrator. I had the privilege and honor of being the director over the psychology department. And so I actually got to have more one-on-one with her, and she became my mentor. And I learned so much from her. Sometimes you learn more about leadership based on what not to do. So she helped me to realize sometimes we have to become the leader that we didn't have. We have to give the tools that we didn't receive. So she helped me to realize that in order to be the best leader that I can be, I have to become a good learner and follower. I have to lead by example. I have to realize that no one person is more important than the other. It all takes us working together and doing our best to carry out our gifts, talents, and abilities, and most of all, to surround ourselves with people who can pour into us. If you are the smartest person in your circle, you need a bigger circle. So you should always, that was one of the things she taught me, and I live by that today. You need to surround yourself with people who are different from you. That's how you're going to learn. That's how you're going to grow. And so her passion for helping students to, keep going after their education, despite challenges, despite roadblocks, despite all the no's you received, that was planted inside of me. Those seeds of hope. I like to say she planted those seeds of hope. She's a hope dealer. She planted those seeds of hope within me, and it just made me want to go then pour that into my faculty members, and that they would in turn pour that into our students. So even to this day, she still mentors me. She helps me to sharpen my leadership style, so to speak, and make sure that I'm constantly growing. I'm constantly trying to find new ways to reach our faculty, our students, to develop ideas that will help others around me. I want to be a positive influence in people's lives. And just by connecting with her, my life was forever changed. So I want to encourage people to find you a great mentor. Find someone who is what you would like to become someday, and learn what you have to do to get on that same trajectory, to get on that path to becoming what maybe you didn't see. I didn't have a lot of people around me growing up who had necessarily overcome challenges. They were still in the midst of challenges. But this lady showed me that you can be in the midst of life, losing everything, but coming back from it and having a greater story on the other side. And that can in turn help change the world when you're willing to share your own story with others.
Gosh, this conversation is on fire. It's on fire, and that's what I hear the authenticity. There's an
Hmm.
authentic self, and when you're encouraged and you see it modeled by someone else, you're like, I can be more
Right.
honest here and with me,
Hmm.
and then I bring that to the people around me. Accept it or no, I'm living with
Right.
integrity, and so and
Hmm.
a theme that keeps that you're it's in your words. I'm listening and I'm hearing the massive amount of humility that you live. You you never stated that word, but it's in all your examples. Be teachable. Be teachable. You
Hmm.
know, be
Right.
respectful. It be grace. Be of grace. I had
Hmm.
heard Anne Lamott had talked about that grace was God's WD-40. You
Oh, I
just a
love
little,
it.
you're being a little squeaky today. You need some grace.
Hmm.
Some um,
Hmm. Oh, I love
but
that.
I have a lot to think about. I can't wait to go back and re-listen to this. I We covered a lot of your background, your mentors, your experience as an administrator in the class and in the classroom. Dr. B, I know you're working on lots of projects, but give our listeners an update on what are you currently working on, or what's coming up at Columbia Southern University.
Yes, Mercedes. I have been fortunate enough, as you mentioned at the top of the podcast, to be bestowed the privilege of being the founding dean of our College of Education. And that's my baby. The College of Ed is my baby. I've been working on it for the past couple of years, working to do with our team to develop curriculum, to get everything in place. So we have currently a Master's of Science in Instructional Design and Tech knowledge that we offer. We offer a graduate certificate in instructional design and tech. We offer a master's of curriculum instruction and a doctorate of curriculum and instruction. But we also have certificates and concentrations that will help students again pursue what their future trajectories are. I always tell students, you've got to find out what your path is, and then we'll help you get there. So you've got to be motivated by what drives you. And so I'm looking to expand our offerings. We're working on doctorate of higher ed. Eventually we'll be, rolling that out. We want to, again, as you said, prepare K-12 administrators. So we're working to eventually offer a master's of ed in instructional leadership, other certificates and concentrations that again will help people who are not only teachers but educators. An educator is someone who simply imparts knowledge and trains others. So instructional designers are educators. People who work on training and development within human resources, they're educators. People who serve as healthcare teachers and trainers, they're educators. The spectrum of people that we can cover and help is limitless because everybody has some type of role in which they are trying to educate or teach others. Even if you might not necessarily have that title, you as an individual are serving in some type of capacity where you are teaching something, even if it's nothing but a behavior, how to treat others, how to, like you said, how to interact and respond responsibly. And so we are developing different areas in which we can help individuals better succeed in those areas. Social emotional learning, that's one of the things that we have curriculum that we can work with school districts on to help them with their school culture, not just the teachers, not just the students, but the entire school culture, which encompasses admins, staff, community members, the parents, the leaders in the community. It takes a village. That's an
Right.
old adage. It takes a village. And I really believe in that. And so my brain is always thinking and trying to think of what next steps are, what are ways in which we can pour back into others and help individuals continue their education because education truly opens doors. Had it not been for my education and my grandparents and mother pushing me and my sister has her terminal degree in social work and mine is in education. We didn't see people like us when we were growing up. We didn't know that there were doctors who were, fields other than medicine. The typical doctors that we saw back then didn't look anything like us. And so I want students to see that you can become anything that you want to be with the right support, the right mentorship, guidance, and time. Some students, it takes a little more time than others to reach their goals. But as I mentioned earlier, a dream deferred, meaning a dream that might be delayed, does not mean that it's denied. It does not mean that it's not ever going to happen. But sometimes people just need a little bit of encouragement along the way. So the College of Ed is committed to helping all learners, no matter what needs they have, because we all have diverse needs and experiences. We're committed to helping all learners reach their highest levels of success. And I'm just honored and privileged to be able to help our team guide the next generation and future generations. Because if we can positively impact a student today who's working on increasing their financial livelihood so that they can, provide for their children, we're not only changing their life, but their future generations. We're changing how they see and how their children see what their lives can become. And so we're committed to helping students, no matter where they come to us, helping them realize success, because success looks different for everybody. But in the College of Ed, we want to help them reach their level of success. And we do that by meeting their diverse needs.
That is, I love Columbia Southern very much. Congratulations on
Thank you.
on the position. Position is not the really the best word, but on your January 2024, you have overcome much, and like your grandparents, you rose to the challenge of bringing this dream, of facilitating this dream for others. I believe education is a game changer. That's why I
Absolutely.
went in, and that's why I went to the juvenile detention facility, because I thought, if I can teach you, I can. I often say I was hired to teach English, but I found myself teaching hope. We're here.
Yes, absolutely.
You can, with the motivation, you can do things differently than you have seen. There is another way. And he talked about the lens,
Absolutely.
putting on different glasses. I have a new pair of glasses today because of education.
Right.
And there's so much positive impact from educators, and that can be anyone. That can be anyone who's involved in helping someone help light their own fire. I'm on fire. Fire. Oh, how'd you get on fire? Well, let me show you how I did it, and then you can find your own way, because success does look different for everyone. And I always get really excited. I feel motivated just listening to you. A lot of good stuff today. Before we wrap it up, what words of wisdom do you want to have for our future teachers entering the classroom? How would you like them to launch?
The best words of wisdom that I could share with any teacher, any new administrator, anybody in life comes from a person who had to drop out of school in the 8th grade. He said, treat everybody the way you want to be treated. That is applicable in anything you do in life. So as you're going into that classroom for the first time, you look at those children as if they're your children. You treat those students the way you want somebody to treat your child. If you're an administrator and you're going into that school for the first time as an admin, and you're responsible for hundreds, maybe thousands of lives, you treat those individuals how you want to be treated, and everything else just seemingly will fall into place. If we just keep a guiding principle of respect, having the courage to admit when, we're wrong or can do something better, and just trying to always shine a positive light on whomever crosses our path, we're going to impact the world one person at a time. And so I would just encourage anyone, teacher, admin, staff member, always remember your importance. You're on the team for a reason. You have value, and you matter, and we need you. So don't ever let anyone take that away from you.
I gotta just take a moment. But take a moment. This is beautiful, beautiful wisdom
Thank you
from
so
your
much.
papa that will continue on. You know, he shared it with you, you shared it here, you share it with
Yes.
others, and that's exactly what you're talking about. It's I've heard some people plant the seeds, some people come by and water them, and
Mm-hmm.
we all have these different roles of nourishment and planting and sowing. I believe I'm a farmer. I'm a farmer in my life.
Yes. Yeah.
Dr. Bia,
Great
I want to
analogy.
express my sincere gratitude for you joining us today.
Absolutely.
I deeply admire you and your commitment to the academic advancement of Columbus Southern University. I just thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mercedes. I truly appreciate this opportunity, and I look forward to connecting again in the future.
Yes. I want to know that I do want to thank you for sharing your experience with our listeners. Where can our listeners find you on social media, or do you have a preference of contact?
Yeah, anybody who wants to connect, I am the queen of connections. Find me on LinkedIn, Freda Barnett-Braddock. Send me a request. I'm going to follow you. You follow me. We'll link up together and see how we can pour into each other's lives. Absolutely. Can't wait to connect with you
That
guys.
is excellent. I do follow Dr. B on LinkedIn, and she's all over the place. She is smiling at all the conferences. I'd love to run into you at a conference sometime. To,
Yes.
to end it out, a message to the teachers. Think about the teacher education program you're in right now. Is there a teacher, leader, an administrator, or a professor that you would like to thank for their encouragement, mentorship, or support? But hey, send that professor an email or stop by campus and say thank you, or shout out to your administrator, because we're in the business of personal reflection, growth, and positive feedback. Stop what you're doing right now and say, hey, thank you to your mentor or your teacher. Say thank you today. You'll be glad you did. This is your host, Mercedes Musto. Join me again on FTCE Seminar, a teacher certification podcast. Hey, subscribe and sign up for our mailing list at ftceseminar.com, or follow us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your favorite podcast players. This podcast is listener supported. Contributions can be made via the listener support link on Spotify, or hey, you can buy me coffee at ftceseminar.com.